Beyond.
Beyond.
That is the name of the show. Welcome, everybody, to Beyond 548. Episode number 548. That sounded like a weird way to phrase that, like a bad screen name or something. My name is Max Scoville, and I'm here with my good friends Alana Pierce,
Hi.
Zach Ryan,
Hey,
and Jonathon Dornbush.
Charmed, I'm sure.
Indeed. We have all sorts of fun things to talk about on this most thrilling of Mondays in the dead of summer when everybody in the video game industry is sort of half asleep at the wheel.
It's like the whole industry goes into a coma.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Everyone's like, can we not talk about things?
Yeah.
it's like this.
a
It's like
day.
this.
Yeah.
There's this grace period that happens within the industry between E3 and Gamescom where they shan't speak the name of another convention. It's like,
Yeah. No, there's good stuff on the way. We're getting sort of teases of what might be coming out of Comic-Con or Gamescom. And then, of course, there's stuff to unpack. We didn't get a chance to properly talk about Death Stranding last week. We talked about all the E3 stuff we were excited about. I spent probably the last 5 hours just like looking at insane conspiracy theories, and I think
of which there are a lot.
Oh, it's so good. It's so much fun. But in the meantime, there's a couple little bits of news I figure we could talk about. Sony is pissing off a lot of people because they are not playing with others. They are not doing crossplay with Fortnite. This has been like a big kind of big kerfuffle on the internet.
Yeah.
Because people obviously they want to transfer their Fortnite progress over to Switch or from.
So I understand the basis of this, but basically it seems like if you try and play Fortnite on Switch with your Epic account, if that account is linked to your PSN, then you can't use it. Correct?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
It's linked to an account that played on PS4.
I had to start a second account to play Fortnite on Switch that I use my work email, which is annoying. But yeah, I mean, this has kind of been a mounting storm with Sony, right? Like, especially in consideration of Fortnite. If you remember back during the game's launch, the Battle Royale launch, Epic kind of threw that switch and had that crossplay for a minute, and then
Yeah.
everybody was like up in arms about it because they were like, "Oops, we
Oh,
did that by
press the
mistake."
button, my bad.
But yeah, I think it's drawn even more so into the limelight now that it's out for Switch and it's out for Xbox, and they can all play with each other PC except for PlayStation. And we've
Same
seen
as Minecraft.
same as Rocket League. I was gonna say
yeah.
we've seen PS4 Sony sequester itself with other games that are like predominantly online as well, and it's kind of a bummer because, like Max said, as somebody that's played quite a bit of Fortnite on PS4, it is kind of distracting to go start all over again on Switch.
So the point is that you lose all your progress.
Yeah,
yeah.
Okay.
And that includes
and
the stuff you
costumes
bought
and
on that
yeah,
account, too.
exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah, that really sucks. I think was it Microsoft or Nintendo that put up like a little coexist thing?
So that for Minecraft,
Yeah.
it was released on the Nintendo channel,
Okay,
but it was
okay.
about crossplay with them and Microsoft, and it ends with them saying "explore together, survive together," but the backdrop is half green, half red,
Right.
and with the
I mean,
Xbox
Says
and
something like better
Switch
together
logos.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the Minecraft update name.
That
and
gets
I
like a
think I
little
was
bit
trying to-
a little bit more convoluted because obviously Microsoft owns Minecraft, but in this case, it's sort of the fact that this could work. It just doesn't because of apparently Sony's doing so.
Well, yeah, they kind of admitted that it was just money. It's interesting the history with this. Like in the PS3 era, they were open to it, and then they completely changed their minds on that. And I think this sucks for consumers. Is the thing. I think for gamers, this sucks, and we should put pressure on these giant mega corporations to allow people to do this kind of stuff because it's an arbitrary restriction. And I know so many developers who've spoken to me about caring about it too. Like the Rocket League devs have been.
Oh,
like,
they
"This
care
sucks
so
for us."
much.
Like we really hate that this is a thing. So it's like Sony's not playing with anyone. From a business perspective, that their console is selling so well, like I understand why they're doing it, but at a certain point, you have to think about fans. You know, you have to think about the people who play your games, and you have to give services like that to those people. And I just think this is really disappointing.
Well, and I think you're going to see more and more of it as the industry leans more into these like cross-platform like multiplayer experiences. You know,
Yeah.
The idea that I have half the office. I'm sorry, I'm going to do it again, but half the office here plays Destiny 2 on Xbox, and half is on PlayStation 4. And like, I want to go do cool raids with Brian Malkowitz, but he's unavailable because this giant imaginary wall that's been resurrected between the two of them. So
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting into such a games as a service environment for almost every game now. Even like single player games are getting that. And to not when you have accounts that go across platforms, because this one it's specifically not just the game, but your Epic account too.
Right,
Won't
right.
even log in.
I think that's where it really sucks.
Yeah.
That's specifically, it's one thing to be like, oh, I can't like play a PS4 game against somebody who's playing the Xbox One version of it.
Right.
That's obviously, it gets more complicated there. But in this case, it's just stuff you already spent money on. Like having to make a separate account, that's terrible.
I mean, that's sort of the side effect of being like a big nasty corporation, right? Is like you get a cut of all of that stuff that people are spending their money on. So like for every goofy costume and pickaxe that I buy in Fortnite on PS4, Sony gets a taste of that. And if somebody is importing their file or importing their profile from Switch or from Xbox and they've already spent that money on that platform, Sony's like, well, where's our X% of that stuff that you've already bought? Like,
Does it work that way?
It's an unfortunate side effect. I believe so, yeah.
Interesting.
If them getting a cut?
Yeah.
I would, if it's sold through the PlayStation Store, I would assume so, yeah. Because you're sort of licensing out a thing to be sold on the store.
They would make money off of like a cut of V-Bucks because you're using their store to buy it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because this is a redux of E3 2017 where it was the Rocket League and Minecraft discussions, and I think it was a Sony Europe exec talked about how they were worried about safety, and then
they spoke about not being able to control other platforms. Like their excuse was something along the lines of like, well, we don't know what other people on these other systems are going to be doing. We can't monitor that community, and I actually respect that, even though I think it's total bullshit.
Sure.
Excuse.
We all know.
It's like,
we all know that those Xbox players have got dirty potty mouths.
They like to cuss quite a bit.
They do a lot of swears over there on the old Xbox.
Well,
the X stands for expletive. Little known fact.
Terrible, the X word. So on the subject of Fortnite on PS4, leaks also pointed to a Fortnite PS4 bundle, which I think is really funny. Is this the first time we've seen a bundle with a
game that's free?
Exactly. Yeah.
it probably comes with the paid version of the game. But
No, it comes
There's
with
a paid version of that game.
there is. Yeah, you can pay for that game.
You get 500 V-Bucks and you get an exclusive Royal Bomber skin that is unavailable. It's only on PS4. So, and that's apparently out July 16th if Amazon Italy.
That's wild.
Yeah, it showed up on just the Italian store, so who knows when it's actually coming. But yeah, it's really curious to see. Apparently, there's also been a story going around paid versions of Fortnite, like the physical versions, are going for hundreds of dollars on eBay. Because because Epic moved away from they sold physical copies at the start when it first came out.
Like a pretty quick in and out.
Yeah, but now they really haven't been manufacturing those anymore.
That's so strange. Like that's such a testament to like the current landscape we're in. What are you chuckling about?
I said a pretty quick in and out, and Alana got the giggles. So
we can't. We're
bunch
trying
of children.
to talk about the
We're talking about the
industry
Fortnite.
here. We're about this is about the PlayStation passion.
I do like the video that Nintendo put up. I think it is good to put pressure on them for stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's Microsoft and Nintendo. Kudos to them for like really leaning into this particular marketing. I think it's really smart of them to like put their banners side by side and put them out in the forefront to the gaming public. It's just like, hey, look what we're doing over here. Where's where's your friends?
They were tweeting at each other too, being like, hey, we can build together.
In the
what
most
should we do?
like the string of most wholesome tweets of all time. It was like all the responses were like, great.
I've seen someone edited the meme with the original PS4 when they were like, here's how easy it is to share a PlayStation game, and it's not passing it. And they like made that, but with crossplay. It was like the idea that you just like absolutely can't. But it's I don't know. I hope that this changes, and I think that the more devs that put pressure on them, the more likely it is to change. But that's not where they make their money, so I don't know. It's tough.
Given the amount of Fortnite that I played this last weekend, I might be purchasing that special edition should it really exist. That's a very fun game.
Well, good. I think it's pretty funny that like you get those cases of like moms who go into GameStop and they're like, I want to buy Fortnite, and they're like, it's not for sale, but now it's like, sure it is. You have to buy this machine to play it with. The only way. Let's see. Other news. This is I don't know if this is
a
spoiler.
$600 free to play game.
Yeah, exactly. We're wondering who the other bad guy that's going to pop up in Spider-Man is. We get there's the hint of a clanking sound, and Spidey goes, "You," and apparently the voice actor who's playing the Rhino accidentally blurted out that Dr. Octopus is in there.
The video that
spoilers,
said that in has since been removed. So it's a little unclear. They took it down. It was like an interview with some like pro Call of Duty player or something.
Yeah.
But I think it makes sense.
A pro what?
I don't. You know what? Obviously, you could classify this as a spoiler. I don't think it's a spoiler if Dr. Octopus shows up in a Spider-Man game. Sure. I would say that he is deliberately absent from these trailers, and it's like that's a major character.
It seems like it would be him, and he is part of the Sinister Six. So it's like it makes sense.
It was either going to be him or the Green Goblin.
It was going to be someone well known. Yeah. My hope is that he though is like a huge part of the story and not just the boss at the end you get to, especially because like the performance of him in Spider-Man 2, the film, is so iconic for a lot of people.
Molina.
Yeah, he's so great in that movie, and he's such a well-developed character that I think to have him in this game and just kind of appear at the end wouldn't really work as much for me.
Not a fantastic game, but I really like the way Arkham's Origins leads into the main villain. Like that game specifically, you fight a lot of villains. They've all been contracted by the main bad guy, and then it's a plot twist who that is. And I think that makes it really exciting because you're constantly like, well, they're all referencing him. I know that like this guy has put out a hit on me. Like, who is this going to be? And if they weave it into the story, I think, and I think they will.
Oh yeah, he's also such a mobile villain. Like being able to use the octopus arms, I can imagine the awesome chases they could do within the city too.
Yeah, and the scale of them is great. I just want to point out, we're watching the clip from the sort of the big raft fight that happens in the E3 demo. I really like that the Sinister Five, or whatever we're calling them here, they sort of gang up on Spidey.
The Fickle
and then
Five.
They proceed to like they're really wailing on him, and then they all start kicking him.
And it's like
a real fight. Like Mr. Negative is just they're all kicking him like bullies. They're like schoolyard bullies. I really like it.
Do you think this is a real fight in the game?
I think it's a real cinematic that happens in the game.
I think it's going to be cutscene or quick time event, but
maybe it's quick times. Yeah.
Also, whatever's happening with our video, the game did not run this chuggy when we saw it. But
Barrett's probably screwing something up in the studio. I don't know. He's got like a coffee sitting.
Senior comics editor Joshua Yale wrote a very cool piece about his theories on who the main antagonist would be in Spider-Man, and Doc Ock was definitely up there because the team that's writing the game also did like a very famous Dr. Octopus comic arc. So all signs kind of point to that.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that. I feel like he's such an awesome character, and we've only gotten him like once properly.
Remember back in the first Spider-Man game for the PlayStation 1, where at the end of the game he chased you down a big hallway?
It's a true terror.
Yeah,
we've not seen since.
Very
then.
good game.
I don't know which one I played. I've played a Spider-Man game, but I really don't know which one it is.
There was one for PlayStation 1 that was like very comic booky, and then there was like the more famous series of Spider-Man games, which were the movie games.
Yeah.
The first one it was Neversoft, I think. And
I think you're right.
It was running in the Tony Hawk engine.
Yeah.
That's so
which
weird.
is really, and then that's why Spider-Man showed up in like Tony Hawk 2 or whatever.
So the one that I played had a lot of open world stuff, and they were like kind of like gang-controlled neighborhoods, like San Andreas style, like where there would be like the certain like gang would control a different part of the city. And I remember it distinctly because it gave me my first ever Xbox 360 Red Ring of Death because I was having trouble on a boss fight and the checkpoint was really far back, so I left my Xbox on overnight. So that game gave me my red what? There we go.
Oh, was that
Shadows.
right?
And I liked it a lot. It had really good combos. It was a lot of fun to play.
Yeah.
It'd give me my red ring.
I always get that mixed up with the Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows.
Yeah, a lot
So
of people
it's
do
an
that.
Easy mix-up.
Yeah. Easy mistake to make.
Yeah. So let's see. Moving on. Here's one of those like no kidding. Tetsuya Nomura admits that maybe the Final Fantasy VII remake was unveiled too early. That's this game that is maybe coming out by 2023.
The thing with this is that I feel like it was an accident. Like him admitting it, maybe it wasn't an accident, but it feels to me like they had a plan and then they have completely restructured the plan.
Yeah. His comment also, at least in the translation of it, said that there were already whispers going around the industry that it was happening, and so they were afraid of it being leaked. Right. And that was partially why it was announced so early.
I mean, we knew about that one. Like, I didn't even work at IGN. And I was working for BBC at the time, and I knew that game was coming to E3.
I did not know that game was coming to E3, and that was the first time I'd ever been at a Sony press conference for E3.
I was there too.
I was there too.
Yeah, it was deafening when this trailer started up. Like the screams from the audience.
Yeah, we all would have been in the room, and we wouldn't have known each
other. That's really weird.
Wild.
Yeah, you missed me crying when the Kingdom Hearts 3 announcement trailer came out. Yeah, surprise.
Good year.
So Square also recently went out of their way to put out a press release to say like, hey, by the way, this game is not just starting development. Like we are, like at least up to our knees in trying to get this thing off the ground. I still can't imagine that this game is anywhere near like even getting a second look. Like,
do you think they like underscoped it? Do you think they underestimated how much people are excited about it? Like
no, I don't think so because fans have been clamoring for this remake since the first PS3 demo. People are like, oh, well, you should remake Final Fantasy VII when they showed that initial clip. But
I think it was probably more complicated than they expected it to be, and I'm still wondering if when it gets re-revealed, which is what I think will happen, that it won't be episodic, because I still just can't wrap my head around how that game is going to be episodic. But I know they, as recently as this year, they were hiring people for battle mechanics, so that's clearly being reworked. And I don't mind with this when some games get announced too early and marketed for too long, you get kind of sick of it. But we know what Final Fantasy VII is, right? We're like, well, I know what this game is. I don't think that there's going to be a problem with me being like, oh, I'm not excited anymore. Like, it's going to be fine.
I'm so excited just to look at the list of Final Fantasy games like 10 years from now, because it's going to be like the company that can't count.
Right.
You know, 10, 10, 2, 10, 3, 15, 7. You're like, what?
Yeah, 9 just came out again recently.
Yeah, it's kind of all over the place. But yeah, no, I mean, it's cool that it is like it is a known quantity. I'm very curious to see how much they tweak it to adjust for like what, how does that story play out in
some weird stuff happens
23
in
or whatever.
game.
Yeah.
Is that still gonna happen?
I mean, the battle system alone in that first peak that we got at
I think that was a
Games Week or PSX 2015.
Yeah.
It was like obviously completely different. Looked more like Kingdom Hearts actually.
Yeah.
Looked more like Final Fantasy 15.
Which I'm cool with.
Yeah. Well, Nomura is directing both of them.
Yeah.
And we actually spoke to him too at E3, and he did mention that it's sort of like moving into the early development stages. Like it's getting into actual production and everything, but and we asked about is Kingdom Hearts 3 and FF7, obviously those are massive things. Like, how are you devoting your time?
Yeah.
And he was kind of like, well, I'm putting 100% into Kingdom Hearts 3 and 100% into Final Fantasy 7. So I'm just going to then fully move over and focus on
I have
7.
to imagine as Kingdom Hearts 3 gets closer to being like Gold Cert, right?
Yeah.
Like I have to imagine that his time on the game starts winding down.
Oh, yeah.
Like as far as like 6 months out, right? Because like there has to be a certain point where all you're doing is squashing bugs, and like you don't need a game director to necessarily oversee QA.
Yeah.
Right. So I imagine
you
that
actually
he's
totally do. This is an interesting point that I learned recently, is that basically if you fix a bug the wrong way, it can break the whole game. And your game director, especially if they have a design background, will be like, hey, you fixed this bug the wrong way and you broke 10 other things. So that is actually like a really important thing, is if someone is like, hey, I fixed this bug, and they're like, no, what have you done? Like, it's really complex. I think that's super interesting. But I mean,
it just goes to show that I have no idea what I'm talking about.
sorry,
So
I found that out literally last week.
If
So
we've
I'm like,
learned anything.
no, I think I mean I totally understand like a domino effect, but I think that there's probably like at least some sense of like laissez-faire when you get further into
especially
like,
if you just have a design lead who would
Yeah.
be fine with like managing that kind of stuff.
and what I was saying is like I think that as one winds down, the other obviously starts ramping up, and like if he's going into like full pre-production or even production Final Fantasy VII, it makes sense for that to be happening now. As the conversation about Kingdom Hearts is more about the release and less about the development.
Yeah, and they very much, he spoke a little bit about, like, they are interested in doing post-release content like DLC for Kingdom Hearts 3, but I don't think it'll be on the scale of, here are 7 new worlds we created. I think it's more like adjustments and enhancements to the game that is supposed to be a very complete package.
Yeah.
So I would guess by January of next year, he's going to really be focusing on 7.
So do you think we see 7 at E3 2019 or no?
No.
I don't think so. No.
No, it might be like maybe that's
2020.
is that a next gen game?
I mean,
you
is
know?
it a situation of like The Last Guardian where they just go like radio silence for a while, and then everybody's like, that game's probably canceled, and then they show up at E3 and they're like, hey, by the way, this game will be out for sure next year, or something like that.
Seems like a safe bet. I really want to know: are we still going to fight a house?
Oh, I hope so.
I hope so.
Like that's. I love how we've seen all this stuff. We're like, oh, it's so realistic, it's so believable, and you like go back and you're like, you fight a lot of houses in that.
I mean, that game famously has like plot holes the size of Texas, and also like bad translation. So there's a lot to be fixed, but hopefully, house fighting not on the list of
it's not
changes.
broke.
Yeah.
It's not
Great
Beat
back
the
of the box.
crap out of that
bullet.
house. just really ruin it. No, it's good stuff. I hope they keep it in the oven long enough till it's like done, because I think there's something really bad about that fatigue you get with sort of anticipation for games. On that note, let's talk about Death Stranding, a game that we have been speculating about since, I don't know, 2016 when it was first unveiled or whenever that was.
Yeah.
So yeah, we saw the big proper gameplay reveal at E3 2 years ago, whenever that was, 2 weeks ago. I don't know what
Yeah, 2 whole years ago now.
2 years ago.
the one at E3 this time, and we got to see a lot of gameplay of Sam Bridges is his name, Norman Reedus, carrying around all sorts of boxes. At one point, he sort of carries a mummy. He goes up a little hill.
He walks through some water.
He does go in the water, and the baby seems to not be into it, but he's okay.
Here we go
got
again. There's the
baby
butt.
up- The butt. They showed the yeah. What the what do you guys think this game is about?
You are
Walking.
a delivery guy who delivers things.
You're a porter.
Yes. And I will admit that this is a really stupid thing to be impressed by, but the fact that it seemed like you could walk up anything a la Breath of the Wild, I was very happy with that. It's like, when a game's going to do this? I imagine it's going to have a bunch of stealth. I have no idea if it's going to have combat.
I mean, he said that it will.
He's talked about how like
that was before we'd even seen the game that he said that. Though.
Just pretty recently, he said that that there would be combat in the game, but it wasn't the ideal way to like get through the obstacles and the trials.
I know initially he said it was going to be like an action stealth game, but since we've seen gameplay, I don't think he said that again.
Yeah, that also may have just been an easy classification for like helping us understand the type of game it is, the framework.
It definitely looks like an open world game, which I was sort of having trouble picturing based on previous things we'd seen. Like a lot of the, you see like a beach covered in dead whales, and then like Guillermo del Toro going into a tunnel or whatever. It doesn't really. I'm not like that. This looks like an open world game. I don't know what kind of a game it is exactly. I'm getting a lot of like survival vibes from it.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be like I love this because I've been scrubbing through this and like picking it apart and looking at all the there's a ton of wonderful like fan theories on Reddit and YouTube and everything, just kicking around there. And I think this is gonna be a game where they're like, hey, you got to take this stuff from point A to point B, and then all this crap happens along the way.
Right.
But I think it's a time travel game. I think there's going to be a lot of weird time travel.
So I mean,
stuff.
I'm having a hard time.
Right?
I'm having a really hard time reconciling like what we saw in this demo versus the initial stuff where we saw like World War II soldiers like hiding out in tunnels and like rolling on tanks and stuff like that in the initial couple of trailers.
Like Matt
it
Mikkelsen.
seems all his stuff
Right.
seems
They do
like
look really
completely different. Yeah. Especially considering like how artistically
Thank you for cutting out there, Barrett.
and design wise.
See the toenail.
The toenail.
thing again.
The toenail thing is awesome.
It just
I'm
seems,
awful.
it seems like totally incongruous. Like maybe that was the idea that they had, a year ago, 2 years ago, and it's changed. Or maybe that's just a part of the game that we just haven't seen since, because even the stuff that we saw at PSX last year just seemed tonally and design-wise like pretty different. So, yeah.
I mean, when the first trailer came out, he hadn't even picked an engine yet, and now we know this is running in, the Decima engine from Horizon.
Yeah.
So I dug into it a little bit. Obviously,
It's got a rash.
we got an official synopsis from Sony, which just
This is
happened.
so wild.
This is what it says. Besieged by death's tide at every turn. That's like the big sort of headline thing. Sam Bridges must brave a world utterly transformed by the Death Stranding.
Wait, what?
It's called the Death Stranding. Carrying the stranded remnants of the future in his hands, Sam embarks on a journey to reunite the shattered world one step at a time. What is the mystery of the Death Stranding? What will Sam discover on the road ahead? A genre-defining gameplay experience holds these answers and more.
I hope it gets renamed to The Death Stranding because it sounds so much goofier.
Is stranding a real word?
Stranding?
Stranding is a thing.
Stranded.
That's
a word.
Stranding.
Like the term stranding in this context is apparently a thing that ocean life does. And like crabs will sometimes just like beach themselves or whatever. And I guess whales too. That's beaching them.
So it would be just similar to stranded. So that's what death is.
I think
The
it's
stranding that kills you.
I think it's okay. If we're going to do this, so they talk a lot about chiral allergy. Like she goes, Leia Seydoux goes, oh, you've got chiral allergy. Is that why you're crying? And they talk later about like chiralium density. If you go back and watch Breaking Bad, season 1, episode 2, Walt gives this whole talk about with chirality, which is effectively it comes from the Greek word for hand, and it means like the mirror image of something, and that explains all the handprints that we see in this trailer. In terms of chemicals, it can mean like if something that is sort of laid out in one way, if you sort of flip the chemical compound the other way, it can completely change its properties. So I think this is going to be about sort of as death, almost as like a not just like a state for life, but like another. I think I sound so crazy.
It's amazing. I love this. Keep doing.
I think it's presenting death as more of like an anti-life, like the idea that there are ghosts,
opposite?
like they're sort of ghosts, but they're almost like interdimensional ghosts.
Yeah.
That's what.
so-
if that's the point, then maybe those hands are. We can't see whatever it is because it's in a different dimension, but that connection is that they are still making imprints.
Yeah, and the stranding has caused like a rift between the two sides.
That seems to be like, as far as like my hypothesis goes, is like whatever is happening with these giants and the whatever creatures are making these handprints, they're right on the other side of our reality, right?
Yeah.
They're just on the other side of the glass, and that idea that they are crossing over to some extent but aren't there like entirely is what the Death Stranding is, right? This sort of no man's land between whatever their dimension is and whatever our dimension
Well, we
is.
know he goes somewhere when he dies, which
Right.
is like sort of underwater or something, and maybe that's like the middle dimension that he has to come back out of. We know this time travel stuff because the rain makes people age.
Time fall.
And I think like we discussed it on the show, the theory that the baby is Norman Reedus' character, that it's his character, and I confirmed that with a reliable source. And I was like, I have this theory. Is this a thing? And I'm like, oh yeah, totally.
Okay.
So it's in theory, the baby is him.
I mean,
that he needs to protect for the future.
So he's Terminatoring himself. He's like, I'm going to keep anybody from John Connoring me. I got to go.
But they're
and
all afraid
babysit.
of the baby too.
Okay.
I think.
I think the baby's the only. He's got like a sixth sense baby is the only reason that he can see the ghosts. So there's a part in the gameplay where he pulls out this weird like card reader thing and he apparently jacks it into the baby or whatever. And then the second he does that little antenna thing on his shoulder starts acting up a storm and like clicking around. Earlier in this one, they talk about how like he's talking to this guy on the radio, and the guy's like, "Oh, there's like the chiralium density is getting off the charts. We got to get you out of there. If they eat you, you'll cause a void out." Which apparently, I think the idea is that if Sam Bridges in particular gets eaten by these ghosts, for lack of a better word, it causes a gigantic explosion like we saw in the past few demos.
Interesting.
And I think that's going to be a key gameplay like mechanic where you have to die sometimes on purpose. And then you have to sort of Groundhog's Day your way through it. And and I love that we're just being like, Groundhog's Day, the Sixth Sense. And I know that sounds like derivative and reductive.
It's Kojima. To find something to cling to.
He's pulling stuff from all over the place.
Right.
Didn't he also tweet a couple of days ago that it's like, no, I didn't just choose Norman Reedus because he's famous. He's also like has a really important reason that I chose. I'm going to see if I can find that tweet. It was like very like, oh, you're a little bit defensive about this.
I'm curious about that. So there's obviously some familiar stuff from. I mean, Norman Reedus was going to be in Silent Hills in PT. There's a really crazy theory going around right now that the character who Lindsay Wagner's portraying has some similarities to the character Maria from Silent Hill 2, I guess, who wears like a red dress, gold necklace, kind of blonde hair. People put them side by side together, and they're like, "This looks like the same character design. This is kind of odd." And here's where it goes really out there. So apparently, the necklace she's wearing looks like notes for a music box, like little punch card kind of code for that. People are trying to piece together what the music box is, like what the notes will be. People have also pointed out that music box puzzles are a huge part of Silent Hill 2.
Okay.
And that you do them in a place called Lakeview Hotel. And in the poster of Lindsay Wagner for Death Stranding, there is a lake in the background, a literal view of a lake with music box stuff in there. And it's just sort of like themes like that. It seems like kind of obviously this isn't a Silent Hill sequel, but it kind of is. It's sort of a spiritual successor. That's the last thing Kojima was messing around with.
If you're right about the survival elements as well, we had been told, and people still don't seem to believe this, but that Metal Gear Survive was Kojima's idea. Like that he was the one who was like, why don't we try this? And I want to try this. And then the studio made it when he had left. So it's like, if it's a combination of everything he's ever worked on, then that sounds awesome to me.
It would absolutely not be surprising to see whatever he had planned for Silent Hills make its way into this game, just under a different name.
We heard some crazy stuff about plans for Silent Hills, though. Like we heard that you had to sign a waiver because it would send you emails and mess with your Wi-Fi. We had next level stuff about that game.
I mean, Kojima gets how the internet works and he understands how people will unpack the things he's doing, and that's what's happening right now. We're already sort of playing Death Stranding, trying to pick all this stuff apart.
Totally what he wants us to do.
I mean, it sounds completely bonkers and out there. I like this one. Sam Bridges had on his one of his costumes, he's got this string of numbers, and people picked it apart. The numbers are 0914-137. And somebody put together that Psalm 137, verse 9, is 14 words long, and it is, "Happy is the one who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks." So a Bible passage about killing babies.
Just insane.
Just seems kind of far-fetched, but also not, I
mean, that's a lot of the stuff that's flying around right now is people just sort of grasping at straws. I was talking to you earlier about a fan video that I watched this weekend, a theory video where, this guy spends the first 10 minutes of the video dissecting a logo, flipping it around, changing the opacity, highlighting the areas that overlap, and then spelling out MGS0. And it's this must be a prequel to Metal Gear Solid. It's maybe Kojima just likes to reference stuff that he's into. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe not everything has a specific, maybe not everything is a clue, and some of it is just oh, I like this thing. I'm going to put this in here, or I made this game, so I'm going to casually wink at that. I love the idea that the community is coming together to try to parse out all this stuff, but it's also why would Kojima have anything about Silent Hill 2 in his game. Like that's from a company that like sort of infamously gave him the boot, and he had nothing to do with Silent Hill 2. So the idea that he would make a spiritual successor to Silent Hill 2 to me is like,
I mean, maybe
that's just asking for trouble, my dude.
Is that the nudge to be like, hey, this is a music box puzzle?
Yeah.
Like maybe that's the wink and the nod.
You know what else had music box puzzles? A lot of Resident Evil games. So what if this is
Resident Evil 8?
Prequel? Yeah.
Resident Evils.
Yeah, these tweets are up. There's basically the Kojima Productions account has been sharing #DS stories, which I guess is Death Stranding stories.
No, it's Dark Souls stories. Kojima also loves Dark Souls.
My bad. This
Or the
one says,
Nintendo
as you may
DS.
already know, Norman Reedus is starring in Death Stranding. However, some people seem to think that he was cast merely to bring in a celebrity. Had that been the reason, though, there may have been other options. Why did Sam need to be played by Norman? And it's basically just about how they have a solid bond. But there's like a couple of things about who designed the art and...
Yeah, that's not like a super huge...
It's just like weird relationship-y stuff that they've just been tweeting about.
And they also already modeled him for Silent Hills, so
It was easy.
just use the art.
Yeah, just
I feel
use Kojima's
you know, you don't have to explain Kojima to another actor, you know, who's probably like, what's going on there? I mean, I love how people who are working on the game are like, I don't understand what it's about. Like Mark Cerny was like, yeah, I've played it for about 5 hours and I started to figure out what you're doing in it.
Yeah, so there are a few devs who've played it. Really just going all out this week. I'm just like, so things I've heard. One of them told me they didn't like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Very,
fair.
like a prolific dev in the industry was like, thought it was real weird and wasn't really a fan. Was like, interesting.
Miyamoto?
Yeah, it was Miyamoto.
Yeah,
I mean,
I had a good chat about it.
There's a lot of conversation around Kojima and the way that he has to tell stories in his own way, like especially around the original Metal Gear Solid versus MGS 2 through 5, in that MGS 1 was localized by an American, and that added a level of cohesion that is maybe missing from the rest of his games, whereas everything kind of gets turned further and further sideways as you get deeper into his gameography. And this, to me, like this whole thing seems like I'm really fascinated by it. I'm a big Kojima fan. Like I've played the shit out of all the Metal Gear games. Do I expect this game to make any sense narratively? Hell no. Like it doesn't matter to me. Like there will be an narrative for sure,
I think
but like whether or not it's cohesive, whether or not it like makes sense at the end of the day is like, well, that'd be a nice bonus, but I don't expect that.
I mean, there's a post on the Death Stranding subreddit where somebody's like, hey, I just had the thought, like, what if none of this makes sense?
Who's this shitty teen that you're doing a voice of right now?
What if none of this makes sense, man?
But it was like this really like panicked sort of thing. Like, what if Kojima's just real weird and all of our theories don't make sense and neither does the game? And I was like, so like art? So like if he makes art and it doesn't make sense?
That's the thing is, even if it doesn't make sense, I'm okay with that because there's value in the discussions that we will have about the nonsense like what we're having right now.
Oh, yeah.
Like regardless of whether this piece is like universally considered cohesive, we will be like, I think this might have meant this, and that will be a game in its own right. And aside from the actual video game.
Now, as someone who got obsessed with the Cloverfield ARG, like this feels just like that, where I may have more fun trying to piece together the clues of what the hell this is as opposed to the actual thing. Yeah. But this is still a great ride, and it's still like a fascinating deconstruction of our focus and attention on the media we get obsessed with.
Yeah,
so it's not a walking simulator.
I think at the end of the day, like looking back on my experience, our collective experience with Metal Gear Solid 5, like say what you will about the narrative in that game, but the meta narrative that happened, the conversations that popped up like in the office, like, oh, and then I got on my horse and I put a balloon on a man and I shot a guy from a rooftop. It was crazy. Like that is one way of telling that story. But then we also got into crazy discussions about the fragmented story that was being told within the context of the game and the backlogs and like even in the unfinished like animatics that eventually went up later. And I don't know. I think to some extent like there are games and designers and devs that tell a story in a certain way, and like Miyazaki is like Michael this, and our friend Michael Zaki. Yeah. It's the same kind of conceptual approach for Dark Souls, where it's like this game doesn't have like an outright like XYZ narrative, but there's a lot of stuff around it that can fill in and color in like your perception, your takeaway. So
I think like lore is it kind of undermines storytelling sometimes.
Sure,
like to flesh out a world so much that it has like a rule set versus letting it be interpretive and letting people pick it apart and try to make their own sense out of it.
Yeah.
Funny, like in BioShock, they put the audio logs in because they had stories they wanted to tell and couldn't figure out where to put them, and everyone was like, "Genius! They put in audio logs," and they were just like, "We don't know how to put this in.
Yeah.
Let's just make
Metal Gear
those,
Solid.
chuck them in there." And
Metal Gear Solid 5 had like the audio log where Ocelot and Snake get in like a naked shower fight, and there's like a bunch of hamburger
Ground
recipes.
Zeroes had some weird ones.
Yeah,
like,
they're pretty weird.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's anything else on Death Stranding? Here's a lot to talk about. Yeah, the logo designer is the same guy, Kyle Cooper, I think, who's been doing it since. My notes are all over the place.
So
MGS2.
Yeah, he's the guy who did the opening titles for 7, which is a brilliant title sequence. Like the guy straight up tells stories using just title cards, which is a wonderful thing. And I love the idea that he's been. Like Kojima made a beeline for him the second he had a budget to be like hiring Hollywood people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like we were talking about Kojima working with Norman Reedus and stuff, and he kind of strikes me as like one of those dudes, like one of those cats, like Wes Anderson or like the Coen brothers, where they have this. He's kind of quickly amassed this like stable of people that he wants to work with over like the course of his career, and. That's what makes a Kojima game, even if it's a lesser known folks like Minagawa or something, where it's like, okay, this guy has done all the character design for all of my games, and I don't know. I think it's just as a whole, he has to rely on his team to like help bolster like what a Kojima game is, and I think like the further we get into his career, the more we see him as like this singular entity.
Yeah.
So
he's clearly working with people he's a fan of too. Like if you look at any photo he's taken of Mads Mikkelsen, you can tell.
Yeah.
But
that's what love looks like.
Yeah, exactly. But I do really I get drawn to creators who have that sort of stable of things. So even as someone who really hasn't dug, that stable of things, and even as someone who hasn't really played a lot of.
This camera. Get it? No.
You're gonna. That's gonna get gift so hard.
Yeah. This is great for the audio show.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, just as someone who hasn't really played a ton of Kojima games, I'm sort of fascinated by all of this lead up and the build up to what Death Stranding actually is.
Yes. And this whole entourage right now is just sitting back, laughing their asses off at all these conspiracy theories and stuff. Like, I love the idea that they're all like, yeah, we know what that's about. You're wrong.
I mean, I ran into Norman Reedus at New York Comic Con. Like, I was leaving a party, and he pulls up, and I was like just standing outside, like waiting for an Uber or something. And I was like, I don't usually do this, but I was like, hey, dude, can I get a selfie? And I was like, hey, man, Death Stranding looks awesome. He's like, yeah, I don't know what that's about. I just do what he tells me. And I was like,
I think he said that at the Game Awards too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what this game's about.
I trust this guy. Yeah, I don't know. It's really weird. He said, he's a very scruffy man. He's going to be running around all kinds of mud puddles, falling in rivers. I'm excited.
Funnily enough, one of the guys on the Dreams team looks shockingly like Norman Reedus. And every time that I'll see him in a distance, he just like looks so much like Norman Reedus. I'm always like, oh, wait, no, Media Molecule, never mind. Just like look incredibly similar.
All right. So moving back, let's talk about another. There's really no way to segue this.
Another deep and complex franchise.
Dorno, tell us about Spyro the Dragon.
Spyro lore.
Yeah.
All right, we can do that too. But going back into the Spyro, actually a thing about Spyro lore actually will come up in this. Sorry. I got to play Spyro Reignited Trilogy at E3, which in the same way that Crash, like first playing that Insane Trilogy remake, replaying Crash for the first time, it just muscle memory hit immediately. Just in the way his glide feels, the way his dash feels, all of the characteristics of him feel true to the original character, which is really interesting because they didn't use a single line of original code from Insomniac because they did not have that code.
Wow.
They couldn't
doesn't
find
exist anymore.
Yeah, they just, I think it was lost in some office
So
moves.
it's just like 100% a remake.
They completely built this sort of from the ground up. I think some of the music, they're reimagining Stuart Copeland's soundtrack and everything, so it's obviously pulling heavily inspired from it. Stuart Copeland of the Police.
Famously of the Police.
But something, if you're watching the video version of the show, what's really interesting is because they're building it from the ground up, but trying to put so much more detail in it. In the first game, you're saving all of these crystallized dragons. In this little hallway that Spyro's running through, there are all these paintings on the wall that didn't exist in the original game, but tell the story of this single dragon that you save in the game. And so you get all this deeper backstory to the actual world that they decided to put in because they had the resources to.
Hey, is Spyro a jerk? Because he's just like beating up these nice old men.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's rolling around just roasting a bunch of versions of the dog from Labyrinth.
He's
like,
been
that's
kind
not
of
cool.
He's been kind of a crap. Like,
Yeah.
he goes and he burns animals and stuff.
But he's voiced by SpongeBob's Tom Kenny. So yeah, he's somewhat nice. What's really interesting was there was an original voice actor for Spyro in the first game. Tom Kenny did him for 2 and 3, the voice. They brought him back to just do all 3 games. because he was sort of the clear fan favorite.
Cool.
But yeah, the worlds are so much more detailed and layered, and not just in sort of the paintings on the wall, but even the way the dragons are animated. Barrett did an amazing graphics comparison from the original game, and it's just stunning to see. You see this new dragon. The old dragon moves. It was basically the same reskin dragon 5 or 6 times for every single of the few dozen dragons in the game. So they're really going hard into building out this world, which I love as someone who played those first 3 games at a time.
Those crystal dragons as well. First 4 Figures, who make some of my favorite statues ever, just announced yesterday, I believe, a crystal dragon statue. So that is going to be available for pre-order pretty soon as well if you want to get one of those.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
What year did the original Spyro come out?
98. It's actually the Reignited trilogy comes out I think 2 weeks after the 20th anniversary.
Oh, nice.
That's perfect timing. I'm so happy we're getting this stuff.
I'm pretty excited about this because I think when Spyro came out, I would have been 12 or 13, and I was like way too tough to play a babby game like Spyro.
Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah, exactly.
Choking dudes in a hallway.
I
But
was chasing this little sheep. It's a cute little adorable sheep.
Looking back at it, or looking at this version, I'm down to play a 3D platformer.
Yeah.
This looks really good.
What's really cool about the first game, too, is there are these sort of open world flying sections where Spyro's constantly flying around. You have to chase down a certain number of trains or go through a number of different hoops. And they're sort of these first prototypical open world areas that the 2 and 3 really built on the idea that you have these areas to explore. So it's really amazing to have the full, the evolution of that franchise just on this one collection.
That's great. And also, the lighting is insane.
It's, playing through it is gorgeous. I kind of spent at least half my demo, I think, just doing panoramic shots just to see.
I saw some of those, yeah. Was there anything you didn't like about it?
So the first one for me is I don't love the leveled structure of it as much. I think 2 and 3 really build on how much there is to collect and how much there is to explore in those worlds. And they build out Spyro's repertoire of abilities a little bit more. So it's just more that the first game is a little more limited than 2 and 3, and I love those games so much more. So I really want to see them.
I think it's sort of analogous to Crash, right? Because I remember talking to you around the time that the Crash Remastered trilogy came around, and it's like, that first game, it's really a proof of concept. It's not aged super well, and I think that's probably true here as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff in the first Spyro game, but I will likely play through it once, just try to get what I can out of it, and really focus in on 2 and 3. But yeah,
which one's your favorite?
Ripto's Rage 2. Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
I'm dying
to play this. I'm also I'm really excited to see if we get a brand new from the ground up Crash Bandicoot game next year.
We just got that new level.
Likely.
Yeah, so that's coming. The new level's coming out June 29th, when the game is also coming to Switch and Xbox and PC. And it's Vicarious Visions completely built that level from the ground up. It's it uses the future aesthetic that's only in I think 2 levels in Crash Warped, so they really want to use that, but they said it's one of the most complex levels because it has all these divergent paths and secret areas.
Yeah, they said they really built it from the ground up with speedrunners in mind. Obviously you can play it without doing any of that kind of stuff, but they really wanted there to be a lot of options and people can get creative with it. So
Crash Bandicoot The Lost Levels, basically.
Yeah, well, so the original level that they released as DLC was a level that Naughty Dog built way back in the day, but never actually they never released.
This is super difficult, right?
Yeah, Stormy Ascent is super hard. So it's amazing seeing that there is a brand new level for the original Crash games coming out, and I can't wait to see if they do something similar with Spyro down the road, just whether that leads to new games.
It's cool as hell. I want a hyper-realistic Bandicoot game where he just goes around as a real little Bandicoot.
Pairing a Bandicoot?
What?
What kind of animal is a bandicoot?
It's what do you? It's
a marsupial.
It's Australian. You should know.
Yeah, I feel like that.
He's got that great Australian accent in the Spyro Skylanders animated series.
Oh. We don't talk about that.
Boy, it's me, Crash. Yeah, it's good.
I feel like it's 1-to-1.
I feel like Crash.
I didn't know you did the VO.
Oh yeah.
I feel like Crash as a Skylander is sort of like how Crash would be if you met him in real life years later. It's like seeing, I don't know, Billy Idol now. You're just like, no, put a shirt on. It's scary. I don't like it. You're like, you've had plastic surgery in your hair. Those are hair plugs. I'm not having it. All right, so real quick, there are, in fact, some brand new games coming out this week, but there's a catch. Some of them are, in fact, old games that are coming out.
Some brand new old games.
What?
They're all awesome, though, or not all of them, but some of them. Far Cry 3 Classic Edition is finally coming out.
Yes.
Far Cry 3 Rules.
That is my highest review score I've ever given. Is to Far Cry 3, 9.5.
I gave it. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5. I don't know. I reviewed
Far Cry 3.
4 out of 10.
4 out of 10. I know.
Yeah.
Far Cry
Very
3
deserving
rules,
of both of those scores.
It's fun as hell.
Yeah, it kind of set the tone for what all future Far Cry games would be.
Set the bar too high, though.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
topped all of future Far Cry games. I haven't liked any as much as I liked 3, and I think
I liked
it's
4 quite a bit. I don't think I liked it better than 3.
No,
it's okay with it.
Whenever I
certainly
play
like 3 better than 5.
it just feels like deja vu. It just feels like, oh, I played this game already.
Yeah.
But like
that's
less
fair.
cool.
Yeah.
3 is part of the reason I dress like this, honestly. It kind of came out right at the same time that I was like, Hawaiian shirts are fun. They're like vacation shirts. I like the vacations. They're cool, you know? Like, I mean, the thing with Far Cry 3 is it's
Big moment for you.
Well, they send you to this like beautiful place, and you're like, "Oh, sorry, it's awful here." You're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, that sucks." And I feel like with like 4 and 5, they're still gorgeous and scenic locations, but they don't have that cartoonish like tourist palm tree like fun
Right.
time. You know, it's more like, "Oh, here's just an exotic locale."
Yeah.
And you get attacked by an animal that shouldn't be on the same piece of land as another animal.
Yeah,
It's just the environment that doesn't make any sense.
the sharks in Far Cry 3 like still scare
They're
me.
so scary because
Really.
I went for the achievement / trophy. I don't remember what platform I played it on, where you
Only
unlock
trophies
the
in this
thing for
town.
getting all the collectibles. And you had to do plenty of like deep diving underwater to like avoid sharks, and you just see them and you'd be like, oh boy, oh I really need this collectible. Like it was terrifying because you never really see them coming.
I think to like upgrade like whatever
Salamander as well.
whatever like bag full of grenades you had to kill sharks to get. Like I wound up just like cheating and just like throwing mines at them from the side of the. I was like,
Yeah,
I'm
I
not
pretty
going
often just shot them while they were in the water.
run over them with a jet ski. Like I'm not going in the water. You scare me.
So that vast speech, like the definition of insanity, it turns out that was actually, again, just another thing that I heard that I didn't get a second source on, but I heard during E3, is that was written as basically like a lot of the time when you're writing a game, and if your designers don't agree, there's like they can have a lot of trouble with that, and the writer kept trying to write a speech for Voss, and they kept being like, no, this doesn't work, no, this doesn't work, so he wrote it out of anger as like do you know the definition of insanity? Like literally because he was writing the same thing over and over and over.
So they just had the dude perform one of his emails out loud. Pretty
much.
I love that.
Dramatic reading.
Also out this week is Ikaruga, which is a fabulous shmup.
Yeah.
That also just hit Switch, I think.
What is
too.
Ikaruga? I don't know what
Ikaru is a super famous, not side scroller, but
Vertical?
Vertical shoot 'em up.
Cool.
Yeah.
The whole thing is you can like switch polarities. Famously, also, this is a good one, a piece of IGN history. On the box art, we wrote, "Our frothing anticipation increases," or something. We use the term frothing anticipation, and then it says
like a sex thing?
IGN.
Or is it?
I don't know.
Our frothing demand increases.
Frothing demand something
Yeah.
like that.
It was something like
gross.
we
Frothing
had an
is-
opinion about a game. We put it through Google Translate twice and then sent it off to the PR person. So
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So the next time somebody's like classic IGN, I'm like, that's that was a classic. I think we did a good job there.
good one.
Also out is Luminous Remastered. That's if you don't want to do anything with the rest of your time and you just want to fall back into that pit, you can do that. That's the thing that people like to do. And then as far as new games, Slime Son is a big one. That's kind of like a slimy little meat.
Yeah, Slime Son is a super challenging platformer. It's been on Switch for about a year. Brian Altano famously loves this game. It was one of his picks for best of last year. But basically, it's like an 8-bit platformer. You play as a little slime boy, and you can stick to walls. You can drip through crates. You just basically do slime stuff. But it is super challenging and just really charming.
You kind of like Alex Mack?
You're exactly like Alex. In fact, it's in the Alex Mack universe.
Yeah.
Little known fact.
Is Alan Strange there?
So a developer told me off the record one time, we were hanging out, and he's like, yeah, this is an Alex Mack game.
So what do I have to lose anymore? It's like I'm just going to tell you all the secrets.
You can get the likeness rights for Larissa Olenek. Also out this week is The Crew 2, which is cars and boats and planes and all those things.
Play that video game.
We did a let's play for that. It's getting there's a beta out right now, and it's getting kind of weird, lukewarm buzz. But I honestly think this is one of those games that if you jump into it in 6 months, they're gonna have gone in and punched it up a bit.
I think it's a really interesting. It's a really interesting time for this game to come out kind of on the heels of the Burnout remaster, because the Burnout remaster sort of took the office by storm again, because Burnout is just an incredible arcade racer, and this game is not getting as good a reception. I think kind of based on the proximity to how awesome that game is. And exactly. The gimmick in this one is that you can change vehicles sort of on the fly, but you can't really.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't always work super well.
Yeah.
You can pretty often accidentally land a boat in the street or whatever. But
It's pretty fun to drop a boat.
That sounds
on
great.
Yeah, they don't. You can't drive them on the street. It's
Night
really
boat.
It's fine. I know that it's not on PlayStation, but it's just if you have a chance, just play Forza Horizon instead, I think.
Yeah, I think this exists in a weird spot because if you are hardcore into arcade
Classic
racers,
shit.
obviously Forza Horizon's a huge one, and then there's
Really
also
good.
if you want an open world game with all sorts of vehicles, GTA Online has that covered. But this one does let you transform. It's also I know some people are really hung up on like brand name vehicles, and so this has like an official big roster of actual officially licensed trucks and cars and boats and stuff like that.
We're talking Lamborghini. We're talking Ferraris. We're talking Porsche.
How many of these do you have? Porsche.
I've always wanted to drive a Ford Mustang, the fastest of the cars. Yeah, so and there's a handful of other things coming out this week, but we've talked for far too long. We will not have a regular show next week, but we will have a very exciting sort of live event we're doing this Friday. It's going to be talking about taking a trip down the old memory lane and talking about our fondest and weirdest and most embarrassing PlayStation memories. And if you are in town for Kind of Funny Prom, and I don't know if we're sold out of tickets for that.
We have a very small allotment of tickets left. It might be sold out by the time the show goes up.
Less than 10 left. So jump on that if you haven't already. Check it out, and we'll probably have a nice 4th of July episode going up with lots of people laughing in the background and an entirely different energy from 4 people sitting in a cold room talking to themselves. You can find us all.
That's also my last day at IGN.
What?
Everyone.
You're going to announce that right now here?
Yeah, right here, right now.
Good Lord. Okay.
boy.
Well,
That'll be up on my YouTube channel before that. So.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, that is going to be my last day at IGN. I'm going on to new adventures. But if people can come, you'll be able to like hang out at IGN on my last day. So.
Yeah. So that's the big announcement. Just you're leaving us.
Yep.
That sucks.
And we're getting scooped by YouTube.
You're gonna.
I'm a news
make
editor.
Sure
I can't
everyone
stand for
in
this.
the building knew before I said anything on any of the shows, and then I was trying to figure out how to time it. But
There's no.
I guess I'm just dropping it on you right now.
There's no right way to do it, and I guarantee you that in 6 months somebody will be on your like YouTube channel, be like, "Why aren't you in IGN videos?"
I don't see you on the fix anymore. What happened?
No, but that's we're all gonna miss you, and that's
I miss
a
being here a whole lot.
pain in the ass. But come hang out.
Of course. Yeah.
Where I think, if to speak for the table, I think we're all super proud to say that we had an opportunity to work with you and do a lot of the stuff that like.
Make me cry, Zach. God
sorry.
damn it.
Yeah,
But we love you very much, and we're very proud of you. And
Thank you.
yeah,
yeah, we can't fault you for going
on to the next one.
exciting new adventures. You're gonna do great.
I'm gonna fault you. I have abandonment issues. I'm real sad.
Oh no.
No, but
him cry.
Yeah,
I make the big boy cry.
Dornbush.
Yeah.
But no, also legitimately, yeah, it's been amazing working with you and like seeing your work here. Before I worked here, I was a huge fan of, and having the chance to work with you, you continue to turn out incredible work consistently, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Where do people, if you can say it, can you get all choked up and misty-eyed? Where can people find the rest of your stuff?
Just everything's just at Charizard. It's my name in the middle of Charizard.
Yeah.
And I'm fine. Not sad at all. Everything's totally fine.
You have more. I think you've got more. What? What do you want, Barrett? What are you saying?
Oh, thank you.
Lonto.
I'm gonna miss everyone so much. It's like this show is like one of the highlights of my week, and I think you guys know that. It's so much fun. So.
Well, that's going to be just a bunch of dead weight sitting around without you here. So you better.
Who will give us the
muscle
scoops?
buddy.
Oh no!
And I was like,
Go to
if
the
I'm
gym.
leaving, what are they gonna do? Fire me? Just take all my scoops. It's fine.
The scoops. Anyway, yes, you can find Alana on Twitter and everything else. Charlanazard. Zach is Zacharias D.
Correct.
He's not going anywhere. So
That's true. You can find me.
You leave. I'll be so cross.
You can find me here, and I'm also on Nintendo Voice Chat most weeks.
You got your first hate mail too.
I did.
I'm so proud.
Sorry
of you.
about that.
You don't take Splatoon lore seriously enough.
And I'm at Char Jonazard. I'm rebranding these
Wow,
days.
really?
Yeah. I've decided to
okay.
rebrand. I'm just swooping right in. Yeah.
Jonathan is JM Dornbush, and you can find him all over the place doing all sorts of nice things and
About
doing a
Kingdom
great
Hearts.
job.
Yeah.
Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
And I'm Max Scoville, and that's it. And I'm gonna miss you, Alana. That's a damn pain in the ass. I'm gonna talk.
Sorry.
Good lord. Anyway, thank you all for listening and for sticking with us through this with the weird emotional journey we call life. And we'll be back next week again with a funny weird live show, and then I don't know, business as usual after that. Beyond.
Except without me in it.
Beyond.
Beyond.
Say it one last time.
Beyond.